for agents right now, it's more important than ever that you over communicate with people, your sphere, your database, your clients, that you're providing value, that you're educating them on what's really going on. Someone's thinking about selling a home now. The education and the expectations that we set are critical. 6 months ago, if someone was selling a home, the expectations that you would set would be, hey, we're going to list it at this price. It's going to sell for more than that. And our biggest challenge is going to be deciding which of the 27 offers we want to accept. Now we have to set the expectations that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if your property isn't priced great and isn't in top shape, it won't sell.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to a Mastery podcast. And today we are with Mr. Chris Heller. Chris, what's up, brother?
Hey, David. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You and I, and it's funny, you and I have known each other for a long time now. Do you remember when we met back in the day?
Was it, I remember a couple things early on.
It was John Alexandroff's mastermind, wasn't it?
What's that?
No, I think it was John. Wasn't it at John Alexandroff's event out in? Well, no, actually, I think I knew you before that. But
yeah, I think we knew each other before then.
Yeah, that was when we kind of like formally met. So, but anyway, man, it's good to see you. And yeah, I've never really been that involved in Mike Ferry stuff. You know, I know he does a great job. A lot of people are. I just, for whatever reason, I've just never have. But anyway, it's good to have you, man. And you're an author of a new book, man, which we're going to be talking about today. I have it right here. I'm holding it up for everybody. That, you know, if you obviously can't see me if you're listening on audio, but it's Dominant Thoughts. So, and it's Chris Heller with Greg Reed. Tell us about tell us, Chris. Well, for little people that, you know, I don't have your bio in front of me. So give everybody a short 30-second, like, who is Chris Heller?
Yeah, I've been in the real estate industry my entire adult life. I got my real estate license when I was 20 years old. I started off as an agent. I became one of the top 10 agents in the country for the company I was with. After 16 years, I joined another company, opened up some brokerages, became the #1 agent in the world for that company, which was Keller Williams. I eventually took an executive role with the company, and the first role was as president of the worldwide division, where I launched Keller Williams globally. They had only been in the U.S. and in Canada, and then we launched them in another 20-some countries. And then in 2015, I became the CEO of the company. So we, at the time, had the largest single brand in the world of real estate agents, 160,000 agents. Ultimately, after 14 years with the company, I left and then joined, and this was not planned, but joined Loan Depot and became the CEO of the sister company called Mellow Home. Prior to that, I had invested in some startup companies, and I was on the board. One of the companies I was on the board of in 2019 said, hey, and that company was Ojo Labs out of Austin, Texas. They were really growing and had some big opportunities and said, we could really use you full time instead of just a board member. Would you join us? And it was the right time, and it looked like it's fun. So that's what I've been doing. I have my real estate team in San Diego still. This is our 33rd year. I helped run Ojo Labs, had fun writing this book, Dominant Thoughts, and then I advise and on the board of some other companies.
Yeah, man. So for people like listening, you know, Chris is humble. This is a very high level individual you're listening to right now. You were the #1 agent in the world at KW. You were the CEO. You know, you just done a lot. You know, what's funny is I am thinking back to our original days. Like, you were like the FSBO, the prospecting guy. You were the guys that were on all the videos at KW. And I was always like, I need to role play with that guy. I need to role play with. Remember that? I used to always reach out to you, and then finally you and I did some role play, and that was super cool. You were super disciplined, man, with that. How did you just show, like, the thing about you is you would just show up and make the calls, man, no matter what. Like, you were putting in like 3 hours a day, right?
Yeah, and when, you know, and it's really you're without, and nor do we need to talk about the book a lot, but this is exactly what Dominant Thoughts is about, is the mindset. And it's not the book is a parable. It's a story about this mentor and this mentee, but each chapter is a lesson, something that I've learned along the way. And the discipline, like early on, I knew I didn't have any experience. I didn't have the knowledge. I wasn't smarter than anyone else. I didn't have a better personality. So it was like, how am I going to accomplish a lot? And so then it came down to working hard, but working hard only gets you so far. So then it was, how can I be more efficient and more effective in the time that I had? So not, sort of working smarter than harder. And I started to see how much mindset impacted everything, not just in myself and what I was doing, but in the agents around me. So I just really focused on developing a very strong mindset and the discipline to do the things that I know I needed to do to accomplish the goals that I had, regardless of whether I felt like it or not, or wanted to do or not. And that's what I've seen is really the difference between, a lot of the people that achieve a lot in life and the ones that don't is, I would say 90% of it is their mindset, and that incorporates everything from attitude and their approaches and how they think about things, how they react to things.
Yeah, I noticed. I know in your book it mentions that it says 90%. It says you talk about the other 10%. It says mindset is 90% of success. Here's why: having a strong mindset helps keep you on track when all the humanness creeps in. Things like fear, insecurity, concern, worries. Tell us about that, because I do know other people that are I would say were disciplined in their lead generation and in their way they showed up, but they didn't make it to high levels, right? So what what would you say is the difference besides just the ability or the willingness to show up every day and grind?
It's a lot of things, and it's not just one thing. It's again, another thing that we talk about is not worrying about what other people think. A lot of times people get preoccupied or too caught up in what other people think. And when you're worried about what other people think about you, it's hard for you to do the things you're supposed to do. If you think about like an Olympic runner in a 100-meter dash or 100-yard dash, the one that wins the race is the one that's laser focused on the finish line. They're not looking over their shoulder to see where everyone else is. And the and that is, and the ones that do look over their shoulder are the ones that end up not being, they're the ones that get passed, right? So it's just that function of, not worrying about what other people think. It's also not being attached to the outcome. That's a big one, especially in our industry. Agents get emotionally attached, emotionally involved. So they, it impacts them physically, and then it impacts their mind, right? It's hard to be objective. It's hard to be productive. It's hard to be effective when you're emotionally attached to something. It'd be like it's like an extreme example, but someone doing a doctor in the emergency room or in the surgery room who was emotionally attached to, what was happening. The doctor's committed to having a successful surgery, but if he was emotionally attached to it, that would be a weird dynamic. And in business and real estate, a lot of times agents have a hard time not being attached to the outcome. And what I've talked to agents about for years is shift from being attached to being committed to the outcome. Because people say, well, how do you not be attached? It's I want it so bad and I need it. My clients need it. It's like, be committed to what you want and what's good for your clients and the outcome that you want, but don't be attached to it.
So help us understand like the difference, because it almost sounds the same. Like, well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think I know the difference, but how does somebody discern the difference between committed to something versus attached to something?
So here's so I'll give you an example of what it looks like. If a real estate agent loses a transaction the day of closing or the day before closing, or they find out that the person that was going to hire them to sell their house hired another agent at the last minute, or the person they were going to help buy a house bought a house with someone else the day before. Um, a lot of agents, because they're attached to the outcome, they get wrecked by that, and they get taken out of the game. They take themselves out of the game. My approach was, hey, I'm not attached to these outcomes. I'm committed to, yes, I'm committed to getting the listing. I'm committed to getting the property sold. I'm committed to helping someone buy a home. I'm not going to be attached. And when I wasn't, and being committed versus being attached allowed me to stay in the game, to not to be wiped out because of something happened. Did I like it when something happened? No, but I was just on to the next thing. It's like a baseball player, you know, hey, we'll use the Red Sox as an example. So, someone goes up to bat and they strike out. If they're focused on that, their next at bat, if they're focused on what they did last time and how they struck out, they're not going to have a good at bat. Professional athletes have to be really good about being committed to what they want to do, but not being attached to it. Because if they're attached to it, they're going to kind of keep either repeating the bad performance or mentally take themselves out of the game because they're focused in the wrong area.
Mm. Well, Chris, we're also I know you don't do a lot on Clubhouse, but we're streaming into Clubhouse now as well. We've got a room with actually 58 people in there live listening, and we've got a couple people, looks like, on LinkedIn as well, which is awesome. So I'm going to open it up in a minute to a few questions. We've got Dr. Finance here with us, who runs a phenomenal club on Clubhouse as well. But before I do that, I do want to ask you, like, and I do want to talk about your book a little bit as well, Dominant Thoughts. And for you guys that are just chiming in, Chris has done a lot of things. He's got a resume, like, just you got to take a look at he was the CEO of Keller Williams. He was the #1 agent at Keller Williams for a while. He's I'm not sure if you're a founder of Ojo Labs or you run
No,
Ojo
just
Labs.
one of the investors and
One of
one
the
of the
investors.
executives
And
building and growing the company.
yeah, huge national real estate company that provides leads and works with real estate agents all over the country. Um, how does somebody, like, right now, you probably see this at a higher level than most, including myself. I mean, with everything happening in the market right now, with interest rates, inflation, and the seller's mindset, what are you seeing? Like, how does somebody stay committed right now with everything happening in this type of a market?
Yeah, it's more important than ever to have a strong mindset, right? When everything's going great, and in this industry, you can sell a home by just whispering that the home's for sale, or you know, every buyer will give their left arm to be able to get into the home they want to buy, and that's kind of easy. When the market shifts, then things change. But what changes more than anything, because people still buy and sell homes, what
Mm,
changes is the conversations we have, the expectations we set, the amount of education we need to deliver, and how we react to the changes. Um, there's that's where mindset, and in having a strong mindset and being able to focus and being able to understand concepts like under promising and over delivering. Um, you know, what our every day looking at what our attitude is, what our approach is, what our expectations are. Those are the things that make a big difference and that help someone in when things are negative around them. Another thing I'd say, David, is we're surrounded, and this isn't unique to this time, but there's always more negative than positive around us, right? If you watch the
mm,
news, world events, the horrible hurricane that just happened in Florida, all these things, there's lots of negativity. It's very hard to have a great attitude and a great mindset if you're too focused on the negative stuff. So then the question is, how do you not be focused on the negative stuff? Well, you have to limit your exposure to the negative stuff and increase your exposure to positive things. So what you listen to, what you're watching, what you spend time doing, what you read, who you spend time with. You have to make sure that you are over-indexing on positive inputs to counteract the negative inputs that are always there. If not, it does impact your attitude. It does impact your mindset, and it's hard to be at peak performance when when that's taking up some of your mind.
Yeah, that's so important. It's funny. There's a book by I think it's Stephen Kotler. He wrote a book called The Art of Impossible, and he talks a lot about mindset. And one of the things he says is with the thought, the little voice that all of us have,
Yeah.
and sometimes the little voice is negative. And his thing in the book is for every time you're aware of a negative thought, you have to combat it with 3 positives. So like if you catch yourself saying I can't do something, like you have to 3x it at least with 3 positives. I just found that super interesting.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
it's a gift just to be aware that you're even having those negative thoughts. I mean, that's half the battle right there.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, right? Awareness. I did something similar and still do it to this day, and that is, and I call it don't listen to your wants and don't wants. So, if as an agent, for example, if you're supposed to be doing lead generation or certain activities every day, the reality of it is there's going to be many days when you don't want to do it, and you're going to have that voice in your head saying, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to make these calls. I don't want to do this, or I want to go to the beach, or I want to go play golf, or I want to go fishing, or whatever it is." I would have those thoughts pop into my head, but the moment they did, my trigger, which was a trigger, was that I would just simply say, I don't listen to my wants, or I don't listen to my don't wants. So every time that voice said, I don't want to do this, I'd say, I don't listen to my wants. And your mind only knows what you tell it. And then I would just make the next call or do the next activity. And that didn't mean that I never had fun or any of those things, but during the time that I was supposed to be doing certain things, I knew that was the only way I was going to achieve my goals. And my goals were much more important than those thoughts of wants and don't wants.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We're working with, we've hired a couple people to make calls for us. And it's funny, some of the things they said, well, it's lunchtime, so I don't want to call during 12 o'clock because they're eating lunch. I'm like, really? Everybody's eating lunch at 12. And she's like, well, I don't know if I should call before 11 a.m. because it's Pacific time zone. And I'm just like, well, holy cow. Like all the things that we say, but it's, and I have obviously empathy and just because that's how a lot of us think,
Yeah. And then shifting that and saying, that goes to expectations. Are you expecting you're going to be interrupting someone? Are you expecting they're going to be mad? Are you expecting they're going to hang up on you? Or are you expecting, hey, this person's going to be glad I called. This person's going to be happy to speak with me. This person has a real estate need right now, and I'm going to be able to help them with it.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, we're problem solvers ultimately. So I'm going to open it up in a minute for questions. But I do want to, I want to tell dominant thoughts. What I know you mentioned 90% of your success and everything is mindset, but give us, like, what would you say is the essence of this book here, that if you're listening, you can't see it, I'm holding it up, but it's a really good looking book here with dominant thoughts, and it's blue and yellow. It's awesome. I would get a copy right away. But what would you say is the essence, Chris, of this book?
It's really for anyone who wants to pick up some ideas or some reminders or learn some of the lessons I've learned from some of the great mentors I've had, to be able to have a stronger mindset or more of a success mindset. The book is just like I said, it's a business parable. When I was young, a lot of the books that I read then that were super impactful were these type of stories, like The Richest Man in Babylon or The Greatest Salesman in the World. And then later, books like Who Moved My Cheese and those type of books. And this is that style of book. So it's 118 pages. It's a quick read, but each chapter is packed with an idea or a lesson that can be very impactful if we understand it and put it into use.
Amazing. So I've got Dr. Finance here on stage, and Dr. Finance is become a friend of mine. He's written 4 books on finance. He hosts. He's got a YouTube channel with millions of followers, like crushing it. Just a really, really smart human being, and he's helping people getting their mind right around finance and money. So Dr. Finance, I want to introduce you to Chris Heller. You guys definitely should be knowing each other. And do you have a question for Chris, Dr. Finance?
Hey, David, thank you for inviting me here. Chris, pleasure to meet you. Yeah, David was telling me some great things about you. I apologize, my voice is a little off. I just ran a giant room with David Hill's name in it last night on Clubhouse, over 1,000 people. So my question, David, would actually tie to this. If Chris, if you're okay with that, we talked about last night why the importance of coaching. David's a very big elite coach, success coach, doing amazing things in the world of coaching. Tim's story popped on. We did a little exercise on coaching, and then we started talking about mentoring. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, have you been coached by someone or mentored by someone or mentored by someone? And if so, who is, and what experiences, how has those coaching and mentoring relationships shaped your life? So that's my question for you. And great to meet you, Chris.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Finance. So look, the short answer is absolutely I have. I've been coached and mentored my whole life. I have a coach to this day. The first coach I hired that I started paying every month to coach me was in 1996. And I have had a coach and sometimes multiple coaches for every day since, and I still do. I have an executive coach that I work with. It is so much easier to accomplish what you want to accomplish when you have someone who's there to help you, who's there to see the things you don't see, or to remind you of the things that you don't want to be reminded of, or to hold you accountable to the things you want to be held accountable. No one accomplishes anything great. Yesterday I got to speak at a conference in Phoenix, and also at the conference speaking was Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer.
Ooh, I wish I knew about that.
And he, talk about, achieving things at the highest level, 23 gold medals, and, his 16 years of training and being coached every day, 7 days a week for 16 years. That is, it's just a lot. I don't know how you achieve at a really high level without that. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. The book, and it's interesting you bring that up because the book is about there's two characters in the book, a successful CEO who just sold his company and this young kid that he meets that he then mentors. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of great mentors. I've worked side by side with two self-made billionaires and was the CEO of their companies and helping run their companies. Early on in my career, I've had some great mentors that were professional speakers and motivators, and provided me with really thinking about things differently than I probably would have if I hadn't had that exposure.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dr. Finance, for an awesome question, man. And as always, Dr. Finance comes through. So, and was John your first coach or no? Because that's how you and I actually connected, was through John Alexandrov, and I talked briefly about John.
He was not my first coach. Mike Ferry, a man named Mike Ferry, was my first coach, but John, I don't know. I had a couple coaches. John, he was early on. He was like my second or third coach I ever had. And, I had seen John speak, and I had read his book called Affirmations of Wealth. And the coaching with John was super helpful, not just from a real estate perspective, just from a life perspective. And a lot of value I got from that relationship.
Yeah, John was my first coach. Before John, I didn't even understand coaching. It didn't make sense to me. I thought coaching was for football or baseball. And John came and spoke at our office, and I hired him after having lunch with him once. And then then I met you at the retreat, which was super cool. All right. So I got a couple more questions. I know you're on a tight schedule. Number one, well, first off, what's the best way for people to get a copy of your book, or if they want to connect with you in some way?
It's available. The book is available in every format. It's on Amazon. We also have a website, dominantthoughts.com. If you want to connect with me, you can do it through my website, chrisheller.co, or any, so, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Just feel free to reach out. Happy to connect or help with anything that someone might be working on.
So I'm gonna go back to what you said about, surrounding yourself with the right, environment, people, etc. Right. So last night somebody asked me about, they made us more like, hey, if somebody's watching the news and they're negative and the first thing that, as soon as it popped in my mind, is, well, that's the problem, right? If somebody's sitting around watching the news all day, that, I mean, I'm not saying don't ever watch the news. You need to be informed sometimes, right? But if
I'll
you're
say it. I'll say it.
okay,
Don't ever
fair
watch
enough.
TV.
Don't ever watch it. So don't even. I mean, I rarely watch the news. I'll watch like just to know something sometimes, but I get it. But there are people, Chris, that will sit around and it's consuming them. So that was my first answer was like, if my clients were sitting around watching the news, they wouldn't be my clients, right? Because it wouldn't make sense to even be in coaching. So first off, like, what are you saying to the real estate agents right now that, it's October, as we're doing this interview, November 2022. Things are a little, there's a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah, there
So
is. This is the greatest time to take territory. This is the greatest time to take market share. This is the greatest time to grow your business, because for every person that is looking at this as an opportunity, that has a strong mindset, that's going and really being of service and value to their customers, there's 9 other agents that don't know what to do, that are scared, that are pulling back, that are being paralyzed by all the things that they're taking in and thinking about. For agents right now, it's more important than ever that you over communicate with people, your sphere, your database, your clients, that you're providing value, that you're educating them on what's really going on. Someone's thinking about selling a home now. The education and the expectations that we set are critical. 6 months ago, if someone was selling a home, the expectations that you would set would be, hey, we're going to list it at this price. It's going to sell for more than that. And our biggest challenge is going to be deciding which of the 27 offers we want to accept. Now we have to set the expectations that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if your property isn't priced great and isn't in top shape, it won't sell. And even at a great price, in 10 days or 2 weeks, based on the activity and the feedback, we're going to know if we hit the mark or not. And if not, we're going to need to make an adjustment to get your home sold. And that's important so that your home doesn't sit on the market, or so that you don't chase the market down and end up selling your home for less than you should have or could have if you had priced it right to begin with. So that's a combination of expectation setting and education. So agents right now have to get really good at setting expectations and at educating their buyers and sellers to help them make good decisions.
That's great, man. So here's one of the questions I think I get asked more than any, because the reality is, there are a lot of agents that just got into business in the last, 2 to 5 years, and they haven't ever experienced having to ask for a price reduction, right?
Yep.
And now all of a sudden they're not sure, like, well, how do I do this, or how do I, it can be very uncomfortable, and so
Yeah, it is. It can be uncomfortable. It's part of that is because of the conversation in our head,
yeah,
and
100%.
and part of it
Well,
is, like, no one wants to.
well, how
if
does
if
somebody
I
get
have
good at it?
Well, if a seller has an expectation that they're going to get X, and then I have to tell them they're not, they're going to get something less than X, um, they don't want to hear that. But here's what every seller does want to hear: they want the truth. Just like when you go to the doctor, you may not like the news, but you want the truth, right? You don't want the doctor who's beating around the bush, or hemming and hawing, or is lacks any confidence or any of those things. You want the one that says, hey, David, here's what's going on. Here's what we need to do. And here's what's going to happen next. So look at, have the conversation. Whenever there's a tough conversation to have it, and have it fast. Run at it. When there's challenges or problems, run at the challenges or problems. They will only get bigger and worse the longer you wait. And if we truly are focused and what's in our client's best interest, and not our considerations, then we would have these conversations and we would have them very clearly. Now, as I said before, it's much easier to have these conversations if we have set the expectation up front. So if I said, hey, David, look, I think this is the right price. I think you agree that this helps your home look like a great value in the market. But we're going to find out for sure in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And in the next 10 days to 2 weeks, if we haven't gotten offers or very close to getting offers, we're going to need to adjust the price down. So you've already set that expectation. So 2 weeks later, when you're having the conversation, it's not, you're not blindsiding them with the conversation, which makes it much easier.
Yeah. So yeah, I love it. And you actually circled us right back to what you said earlier is committed versus attached, right? Like if you're committed to, I'm just here to help, serve, solve a problem. If it works, great. If it doesn't, obviously I want to help, but if you're attached, you're like, oh my God, what if it doesn't close? And oh my gosh, my client, no, if I don't get a commission, and that's just a different energy.
It's a completely different energy, and people can feel it, and it comes through in your words and your actions and your mannerisms.
Last question, Chris. How does somebody strengthen their mindset? Give us a couple of tips that people can take right now.
Yeah. So one of them you already mentioned, and that is to minimize the negative stuff around you, and at the same time, filling your mind with great books, great podcasts, uplifting shows, great music, whatever it is, it gives you energy. The other thing is start to conquer something that's really challenging. Like pick one thing. It might be the time of day that you get up, or what time you go to bed, or exercising, or a part of your diet. Just pick one thing that's really challenging and conquer that one thing. If you put all your energy into changing that, then everything else becomes easier. And what that does is it helps build confidence. It helps build the muscle of discipline. And when you start to do that, then it's easy to transfer that into other areas.
Yeah, awesome. And so I would start off by getting a copy of Chris's book, Dominant Thoughts. And Chris, just, I appreciate you being here. I know you said you had a hard stop. We still got about 3 minutes before that time. So do you, what do you want to say? Like is there something I didn't ask that you want to say, or what are your final thoughts or your dominant thoughts for everybody listening here?
Look I hope, and anyone who's written a book knows, you don't write books to make money. And this was not why I wrote this book. I wrote this book, quite frankly, because I have 4 kids between the ages of 22 and 32. And I think it's more effective for them. They don't want to hear from dad. They don't want to hear these ideas from dad. But one of their friends might read the book and say, have you read your dad's book? This is really good. And then for every other young person out there, or person of any age, for the reminders, I think there's a lot that we can accomplish with the right mindset. And anything that I do that might help someone do that is very cool. And that's why I did it.
Well, amen, brother. Make sure you guys are following Chris Heller, and make sure you get out there and get a copy of this book. It's on my desk right now, Dominant Thoughts, and appreciate you, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Hey, David. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.